This is Attorney Charles Green. I'm a family law specialized attorney here in Los Angeles, California. We have offices at 3699 Wilshire Boulevard, Suite 700, LA, California, 90010. We also have a phone number, 213-387-4508. So you're always free to call us and schedule an appointment. What we're here to talk about today is child support, particularly child support in a 50-50 custody arrangement. So it's not unusual here in Los Angeles, California, if the logistics and dynamics of a particular family allow for it, the two parents and the children, if the parents live close enough to the school, close enough to each other, then we can do a 50-50 custody arrangement. And today we're going to talk about child support. Child support. Okay. So, and one of the main factors in child support is the timeshare. Is the timeshare 50-50? Is it 80-20? What is the timeshare of the child with each parent? That is a major factor in the computation of child support. So I'm going to approach the child support discussion today from the two major forms that the court looks at. So there's a lot of different ways to analyze child support, but I wanted to talk about it from the two forms that are going to be in front of the judge that's going to be calculating your child support. Okay, so the two main forms are the income and expense declaration and the disomaster. The disomaster is a calculation of the child support through a formula, a computer-based formula. And while there are some variations to the disomaster program, this is essentially what the court system here in California uses for child support calculation. So what is important is the inputs. What are the inputs into the disomaster program, the financial inputs, and the timeshare inputs that calculate the support? Okay. The source documents for a lot of those inputs would be tax returns, W-2s, Schedule C from a tax return, which is for self-employed people, Form K-1, Form 1099, which are all components of Schedule C's or profit and loss statements. Okay, so where do we summarize all this information for the judge so the judge doesn't have to act like an accountant? The information, the financial information, is presented to the court primarily on the income and expense declaration, which is otherwise called here in California Family Law Form FL-150. The FL-150, a very, very important form for child support calculations and other financial calculations during the divorce process. So, the most important thing is, what is your income? Okay, but the form starts with some information like, where do you work? Are you self-employed? How much do you get paid per week, per month? This is all important because after timeshare is input, we need to know what is your income. Now, the most basic one would be wages and salary. So let's just assume we have a 50-50 arrangement for the child spends 1 week with one parent, 1 week with another parent, okay? And so it's 50-50. But one parent earns more money than the other parent. Well, even though they both have an equal timeshare, if they're both employees, that information gets input into the disomaster program, and the information comes from the income and expense declaration that you or your attorney will prepare. And then the disomaster will tell the judge what the child support should be. So even if you have an even timeshare, if you earn most of the income or more of the income, you may end up paying the other parent child support. Now, you could even have more than 50-50 timeshare. You could have 70% of the time with the child. But if you make more money, substantially more money, than the parent that has the 30% timeshare, you could still end up paying child support to the other parent. And stated very simply, the theory behind that is the standard of living for each household. So that when the child spends time in either household, the child's standard of living is not impacted dramatically. Okay, that can't always be avoided, but that's the general theory behind a child support calculation. Now, the FL 150 is a very important form, and it is subject to litigation and examination in a courtroom quite often. And I'm going to talk about some of the key points that I usually look at and cross-examine another party on the information presented. So, on the first page, it's mostly basic information. But if we go to number 4 here, which says other parties' income. Other parties' income can be very important in a disputed child support calculation situation, because if one party does not adequately provide information to the court could look at the form that is properly filled out, and if you believe your spouse is making, let's say, $5,000 a month, or $10,000 a month, or $20,000 a month, and they haven't submitted an income and expense form, or they left their income information blank, or it's default, they're just not participating in the case, then this is the only information that the court may have. And sometimes the court will use other parties' income listed on your income and expense declaration to calculate the child support. So the court could question you about that. What makes you believe that your spouse earns $10,000 a month? Okay, so notice I said month. These two forms and most of the calculation is discussed in a monthly format. Monthly income, monthly expenses. So that, getting back to that, what you put on number 4, other parties' income, very important, okay? But try and be accurate, because the court could question you. How do you know your spouse makes $10,000 a month? You say, well, we did joint tax returns up until we separated a year ago. I saw his paycheck. Or, Your Honor, here, I have some of our old bank statements showing that $10,000 a month was deposited into our account. Well, it wouldn't necessarily be $10,000 deposited, because what's deposited into your account is net of taxes, okay? But it would be approximately, 25, 30%, 35% less than the $10,000. So it has to all sync out to make sense. All right, moving on to the next question. The next question on the form is number 5 is income. That's your income. So, and it's for a wage earner. Okay, so when it talks about salary or wages, you need to understand the difference between being an employee getting a salary and being self-employed, okay, reporting your income on a Schedule C of your tax return, or self-employed where you're generating your own paycheck. Okay, if you're generating your own paychecks through a company that you have control of, okay, a small corporation, for example, then you would list it as salary and wages if you're generating a paycheck. If you're not generating a paycheck, then your income is income from self-employment, okay? for purposes of this form. All right, even if you're getting the income through some type of corporation, it's still income from self-employment. And it doesn't have to be a corporation. It could be coming from self-employment activities and Schedule C on your tax return. But let's stick with W-2 income. So the form here asks for last month's income and average monthly. The average monthly is usually presented as a 12-month average. Sometimes we may use information like, say we're in month 8 of this year, okay? We might do an 8-month average, but we let the court know what the monthly average is derived from. Is it from year to date, up to August, up to September of this year, or is it 12 months rolling average backwards? So let the court know. You could put a little asterisk, a little explanation here. What is the monthly average? How is it being derived? And what is last month? And also, you would want to explain why there might be some major differences between monthly average and last month. All right. Then there's overtime. Overtime is always a big controversial subject. There's a lot of different types of employment that is overtime, and nobody ever wants the overtime figured into their child support calculation. So, remarkably, a lot of times if people have a child support hearing coming up somewhere on the horizon in the future, they suddenly are not working their overtime. And that's why monthly average could be influential to the court on what child support should be. Now, touching on the overtime issue, all right, sometimes it's not fair. It's just not fair to the payer of child support to have the overtime figured into the base child support. The base child support, which is figured on the DissoMaster form. Okay, so what we can do in those situations is we put the base number of child support into the DissoMaster, and then we do a separate schedule for overtime income. All right, so if there's no overtime, you're not paying child support on it. If there is overtime, there's a separate schedule that say what percentage of the overtime, of the gross overtime pay, should be remitted to the other spouse or the other parent. Okay, so a detailed discussion on bonus tables and overtime tables and DissoMaster calculations would be for a separate discussion and video. This is just a general overview on the inputs and the form information for child support. Okay, so then if we move down, so there's a lot of information you could put on 5, but that's mostly having to do with W-2 income, which is a statutory employee getting a paycheck. Then comes investment income. Investment income is very important because there's a lot of people, especially here in Los Angeles, that make their money and get paid in part or in whole on a Form K-1. A Form K-1 is generally taxed as capital gains, investment income, and that tax rate is usually less than the tax rate on salary and wages in a W-2. And that investment income would be listed in number 6, and it also calls for a schedule showing gross receipts less expenses, and that could be, for example, if on number 6 you're talking about a rental property income. So why are we talking about all the different types of income? Because in child support is calculated on income available for support. All sources of income, all sources of realized income is what child support is calculated upon. And that income could come from wages, from a salary of a job. It could come from self-employment, generating income and reported on these forms in various forms. Schedule C from your tax return, Form K-1, different ways of documenting and reporting self-employment income. And income can also be rental income. And number 6 has rental income. Rental income. Okay. So rental income, and then that would be Schedule E on your tax return. So if you don't have a recent Schedule E, you would do your own little schedule mirroring a Schedule E, which is the gross rental receipts, expenses, net, divided by the number of months in the year. And that's your monthly rental income for all income available for support. Okay, so now going down to number 7, which is another major area for the inputs of income that travel from Form FL-150 over to the DISOmaster for the actual calculation. That's where the self-employment income is. That could be the K-1, Schedule C. It could be a tax return for a different type of corporation that you're operating and owning. But usually those corporations, depending if they're an S Corp or a C Corp, would either be generating a W-2 for you, if it's a Schedule C and you salary out the income, or it could be a Form K-1 if it's an S corporation or an LLC, okay, or an LLP. So that type of income shows up on number 7, income from self-employment. But here is where a lot of people get themselves in trouble when child support is litigated, and we look at this form. It says attach a profit and loss statement for the last 2 years or Schedule C from your last federal tax return. Okay. Many people try to skip this step, but if you don't put the detail, okay, the Schedule C or profit and loss statement, then it doesn't really allow the court to get the full picture, and the court may not believe you're being fully honest because there may be perquisites. What is a perquisite? A perk, for example, if you're deducting, for example, your car from the business expense as a business expense, okay, from the gross receipts of the self-employment income, okay, that would be something the court might inquire about or add back, okay? What if you don't need the car for the business? Why are you deducting it from as a business expense, okay? Are you deducting medical insurance? Are you deducting a portion of your home mortgage? So the court, are you deducting your cell phone? What are you deducting? Is there depreciation, which is a non-cash expense deduction that some courts, some judges may add back to your net income? Okay, so the issue with self-employment income is we start with gross income, expenses, net income. Net income from self-employment income is what the individual is usually taxed upon, and that is the number that travels over to the DISOmaster as self-employment income. So there's a lot of controversy, discovery, investigation into what is deducted from self-employment income of various types. What are the expenses? What is the net income? What do we add back? Okay, if it's very basic and clear, an attorney can handle it in court. If it gets complex, then sometimes people have to hire a forensic accountant to prepare a report or to be an expert and explain it to the judge. All right. So I personally have a background in accounting before I became a lawyer, so I have somewhat of a general understanding of the behind-the-scenes analysis of different types of tax returns and different types of entity reporting and profit and loss statements, Schedule C's, Form K-1s, and whatnot. Some family law attorneys are financially astute and aware. Some are self-taught, and others have to rely on accountants for assistance. Okay, so those are some of the main areas of the I&E. Another important aspect of the I&E is number 11. Number 11 is the assets, okay? the assets, generally speaking, are what are your savings, okay, and then other property like real property. So, well, this is just going to be a basic discussion. So we're only going to really talk about the savings here. So I'm looking here at an I&E right now that had a 0 for savings, okay, a 0. But then when we went to court on this case, they argued that they were paying some of their expenses with savings. So I pointed out to the judge, hey, Your Honor, look, they didn't list any savings. And on their last I&E from 6 months ago, they still didn't have any savings. So we are not being told the truth. There is no savings. How are they paying their expenses? Okay, so now this is the segue. Now we're going to move into expenses, number 13. This is where most people get tripped up on the income and expense form for what their income is, and that income travels to the Distal Master Program, which calculates the child support. So if you show expenses of $10,000 a month and your income is $5,000 a month, and number 13 has several different boxes. One is estimated expense, actual expense, proposed needs. If you checked actual expenses and you say my expenses are $10,000 a month, and then we look at the other page, okay, we go back and we look at income, W-2 income, $5,000 a month, then, hey, how's that possible? You got no savings, and you're somehow paying $10,000 a month in expenses. Well, what that means is something is wrong here. Something is wrong with the picture. So maybe your new partner is giving you some money. Maybe a parent is giving you some money each month. Maybe you're working, doing some sort of job, but you're not disclosing it here on this form, okay? So expenses have to be in sync with your income, or you have to clearly demonstrate to the court, well, Your Honor, look at my debts. Number 14, look at my debts, okay? If you look at the last 6 months of my debts, you could see my debts are going up because I am borrowing on my credit cards to pay my expenses, okay? I do not earn enough money and I am borrowing, and it's clear by the increase in my debts or the debts visible on this form. That's why approaching the income and expense form for the calculation of child support has to be looked at comprehensively. You must have a highly competent and sophisticated attorney for your family law case, for your child support case, that understands the interrelationships of the different sections of the form, okay, and how variances in the way the different sections intersect with one another can be used against you as evidence to have the court use a different income number than what you're presenting as your wages. Okay, and that's pretty much the main gist of the basics of the income and expense form FL 150. So if the court determines that your expenses far exceed your income and something's wrong, the court could make a finding that your actual income is the expense amount, okay? And that sometimes can be double or triple than your stated income. I recently had a case where the one parent was saying, I was out on disability, my temporary disability ended, I have no income. And that same parent showed $11,000 a month of expenses and very little debt. Okay, very little debt. Didn't fill out anything on the form about amount of expenses paid by others. Okay. Didn't show adequate reduction in savings or adequate savings to cover something like that. And the child support court judge made a finding that the actual income was the amount of the expense listed, even though that person said, I don't make any income. Well, think about it. It makes sense. If you're paying $10,000, $11,000 a month of expenses, okay, you're not showing an increase in debt. You're not showing an adequate increase in credit card debt each month. Okay, no loans, no loan from Uncle Harry listed here. Okay, then you're getting money from somewhere, and income from all sources. Income from all sources is what can be used for child support. Okay, all right. Well, the point of this discussion was to relay to you. Pay close attention to the FL-150 form, understand the different components of it, gather the correct information, make sure there is synergy between each section of the form. It has to make sense. Family law judges, family law attorneys deal with this information on a regular basis, and if your spouse, partner, other parent has a sophisticated, experienced family law attorney, they will quickly be able to analyze this form in their head and pick out inconsistencies and use that to their client's advantage. Okay? And like I said, in the recent case I litigated, the one parent listed zero income. After I questioned that parent on the stand about expenses, the judge found that that parent was not being honest and found that the expense amount of $11,000 a month was the actual income. Actual income. And there's a difference. The court could find actual income or an imputation of income. So if they make a finding of actual income, that means the judge says, you are really earning this, okay? You are really getting this money, and we're going to calculate child support based on that. Okay. And then the timeshare comes into play. Okay. The parent with the higher timeshare would have some offset if they both had equal income. The parent with less of a timeshare is if they have less income, might be a recipient of child support, even though they have less of a timeshare. So there is an interplay between timeshare and the amounts of income, and this DissoMaster program figures it out and provides different types of information in the results. It provides an analysis of what would be after-tax income, because the inputs on this form are gross numbers, okay? Not what's your paycheck goes into your bank, but the gross. So your gross could have been $10,000 a month, but you're only getting $6,500 in your bank account. Well, the $10,000 is what goes into the DissoMaster. The $10,000 for a W-2 person is what goes on the FL-150. So those inputs go in here. Okay, the timeshare goes into the DissoMaster, and then the court calculates. Now, a lot of people talk about, I want the exemption for the child. So the payer of child support, if you are the one who gets the exemption, congratulations. You're going to pay more child support. Okay? So if you don't have the exemption, you pay less child support. If you get the exemption, you go to the second part of this form called Proposed Tactic 9, and that part of the form figures out what your child support should be if you are utilizing the tax exemption for the minor child. The reason being, if you're using the tax exemption, you're paying less tax. So you have more cash flow available for child support because you're not paying more taxes, okay? So user of the exemption, less taxes, more child support. So in actuality, it doesn't usually matter who gets the exemption in a child support scenario. Because if you're the payer of child support and you don't have the exemption, you'll pay less child support. If you payer of child support, you do have the exemption, you pay more. It's not a huge amount more, but it is more. It figures out, the program figures out, not perfectly, but closely, what the difference in cash flow is and computes child support on that variance. All right. Then another important part of the DISO master form is net spendable income and the percent to each parent. So it aggregates, this DISO master aggregates the income. One parent makes $10,000, one parent makes $5,000. Together they have $15,000, and this form will calculate child support and then tell you after the calculation of child support, okay, one parent, both parents have approximately the same amount of net spendable income. One parent has 49%. One parent has 51%. So it's not exact, but it gets close. It gets close. So the combined net spendable income and the net spendable income is supposed to mirror what your paycheck is, that the amount that's deposited into your bank account. Okay. So the net spendable, the program figures out what the taxes, the federal and state income taxes would be, and presents that number. So the program is trying to be fair to make both households at a similar standard of living for the benefit of the child. So I hope this discussion was helpful. If you have a child support case, a basic case, or a very complex case, feel free to call me, Attorney Charles Green. I am a board-certified specialist in family law here in the state of California. I have office here in Los Angeles, California. I practice primarily in the Los Angeles Superior Court system. I do sometimes go to the surrounding counties, but the majority of my cases are in the Los Angeles Superior Court system. And you can call us here, make an appointment, talk to me, hire me by contacting us at 213-387-4508. And our offices are located on Wilshire Boulevard, 3699 Wilshire Boulevard, in the heart of the city, in the Mid-Wilshire section of the city, just a few miles from the downtown main courthouse on Hill Street. So 3699 Wilshire Boulevard, Suite 700, Los Angeles, California, 90010 is our law office address. We look forward to hearing from you if you need our services or want to inquire about that. And hopefully you will have an accurate child support calculation. And these types of analysis, the information from the FL 150, is something that also may be used in a spousal support computation, okay, which is a little more complex and different than the child support calculation. And that's something for another video. So I hope this was a constructive discussion, and I look forward to meeting some of you that may be interested in our services. Thank you very much.